Welcome back, friends, with recurring guest Rajee and Narinesingh. Trans individuals have faced many obstacles in their lives. The idea of many trans people is to be passable and the ability to blend in society and not get clogged. A reference to being outed or exposed. Today, we'll be talking about spooked and what it means. Spooked?
Spooked.
Oh no.
You got spooked. What does that really mean? Hi, Rajee. How are you? It's so good to see you. Welcome back, girl.
Wow, thank you for having me back. I appreciate it. And I love the topics that we're going to be covering today. So I'm excited.
Spooked. That is a phrase that is so prevalent in our, community of mostly trans experience. That phrase spooked has such a dark energy around it. But we wanted to just kind of go around and discuss what that really means and how does that play in our life. Misty, what is spooked?
Spooked is being not clocked from afar, but an interaction where spook, they clock that you're not really born a female, and then all of a sudden spook, everyone else notices. No, it's an embarrassing thing to happen in public usually, or when someone finds out.
Rajee, what is your impression of spook? Have you heard that terminology? Have you experienced people using that in a dark, just like an expression that's negative? What's your opinion on the word or the idea of spook?
Okay, so, to me, spooked is a terminology from the old school. I mean, it's been a word that's been used since I came out years ago. And, something that struck me that Misty said about blending in, honey, I've never blended. The only thing I've blended is this foundation. but really, I don't think I've ever per se blended in. And so for me, when I think of spooked, I don't think I've ever really tried to pass, really. What I'm trying to say is I think some of the trans women in the community, they really make an effort to blend in and quote unquote passing, meaning like if you go out into society, people just look at you as just the woman. I mean, there's no questions asked. I think for me, it's all about being like my best self and the best Rajee that I can be. And I know probably 8 out of 10 people, when they see me out in public, they know I'm a trans woman. The difference is, I don't think, and no offense to men in dresses, the gender nonconforming movement is coming out, and it's like, I'm so happy about that. But I don't think I look like a man in a dress. My thing was to look as feminine and as much as a woman as I could look like. But the thing about trying to pass, I never really tried because maybe I didn't think I could. Maybe I didn't think I could,
I kind of feel like it happens if someone feels the other person is pretending, or they're trying to not let it happen, and then it draws attention to them. And then when it gets called out, it's like a humiliating experience.
That's a great point, Misty. Oh my God, because I think with people, when they really clown on us, I think their thing is, oh, you're perpetrating a fraud, and we're going to call you out on that. And the reality is, when I encounter energy like that, I'm like, there's no fraud here. I may not say it out loud, but in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm just being me. And
you see what you see.
Right. You see what you see. And I'm not delusional. I know I am not a cisgendered woman. I'm not. And I'll never be that. I am a transgender woman. And at one time, I was identified in the world as male. I mean, I may have not felt like I was male, but that's what I was labeled as. And so I think it's all how you look at things, because we trans women, we have the gift of duality. We have that experience of like living, you know what I'm saying, as both.
Right.
Yes, in terms of male privilege and knowing the difference between being treated male and treated female, you can compare. Most people are just one the whole time, so.
Well, let's just say this, trans individuals face many obstacles in their lives. The idea of many trans people is to be passable and the ability to blend into society. Now, Rajee, I like what you said about you just being yourself and not focusing so much on the idea of what a woman should be now. And I had a tough transition within the community. A lot of the girls were not really as nice. A lot of the girls were also mean, and they made you feel like you had to do certain things in order to be quote unquote passable, or, you know, to blend in the circle or to blend in society, period. And that's where you got the pressures of what they call getting pumped. And, you know, the girls had to get pumped, and some girls took getting pumped, like myself, you know, we use that as our outlet to be more passable. And it wasn't always good. And I think sometimes in society, we just have to learn to love ourselves and respect ourselves and follow your own journey and your own path. Do you ladies agree?
I think realness is a state of mind and a damn good effect.
Exactly. And I think sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on who's passable, who's real. And, you know, you just got to get to that place that I mentioned this before, where you've transitioned and you decide what that transition point is, you know? And I think that aids in your blendability when it comes to getting like spooked. I've definitely been spooked before a few times, and it's definitely not fun. But what are some ways we could handle when that situation arrives?
Well, okay, so I just want to address the whole thing about being pumped and doing that to be quote unquote passable and not get spooked. You know, the thing with us trans girls is that a lot of times we didn't know when to stop. You know, the pumping went over the top, and we ended up not even looking like how most cisgendered women looked. So that in the very thing that we tried to use to help us be more passable, it almost flipped around, and it was like, oh no, that has to be a trans woman. There's no woman that has an ass like that, or breasts like that, or is so over the top. And, you know, a lot of us, I mean, I'm just trying to keep it real. A lot of us trans women, we do take it to the hilt with our looks and getting pumped and doing what we did to did to our bodies. But, you know, for me, I think you brought up something really powerful in the sense when you said about the safety issue. Because I think for, you know, a lot of people in the world, they think, oh, it's all about vanity and you all having the big breasts and the big butts and all of that. But a lot of it was motivated also by us wanting to be safe when we went out into public. Because if you look like a man in a dress, a lot of times they were going to come and beat you down. So, you know, you were oftentimes subject to being harassed and not only in verbal ways, but also in physical ways. So I think the safety thing really plays into it.
One of the things that I've learned.
What about in terms of safety? I have to bring this up. What about when trans women stunt? And what about the men out there who front that they're not interested, and then secretly on the low, ooh, don't tell nobody.
Ooh.
Oh man.
Listen, I always said, don't call me a freak or a faggot in the daytime and come knocking on my window at night to get in my bed. I'm not saying that a guy needs to broadcast what he's into, but have some respect too. So, I understand the pressures on men and how they can be it's almost like their reputation is at stake. And so that goes into misogyny and the standards of what men are expected to be in the world and do in the world. And so I had a guy once tell me, we were seeing each other for a while off and on, and he said to me one day, if the world was different, I would be with you. And my response, and my response to him was, sometimes you can't wait for the world. You have to live in your authentic truth despite what the world says or thinks. And so I think that that's a big thing with men who date us. But I will say this, I have never tried to fool a guy. I have always said, well, when a guy approaches me and he's trying to get with me or whatever, or connect or date or whatever, I always say, you do know that I'm a special girl, right? Because
now, is that dangerous in itself? Doing that right there in itself, is that dangerous? Just revealing that?
I think it's smarter than not letting someone know till a long time after, and then they get very worse of a reaction and get totally mad. I think it's good just to be your authentic self. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, that's on you to notice that it wouldn't have worked out anyway. So you just cut it loose and onto something new.
Exactly, Misty, because I've never had a guy like get angry or try to beat me down when I say that. It's either they're down with it or they're not into it. And I find that it's better to present it up front, because then they don't feel like they were fooled or it was a bamboozled situation. And also you're protecting yourself. Now, I have had experiences where, this was some years ago, where I met guys. I met this one guy at the gas station, a Jamaican guy. I'm pumping gas. I just knew he knew that I was trans. I didn't even think I had to say it. And when we got together, we exchanged numbers. And that was the experience that made me from that point say, you know what, anytime, whether I think a guy knows or he doesn't, I'm gonna let him know. We're on a date and we're making out, and he's taking his hands and going up my thigh. And in the middle of that, he says to me, I'm surprised, a woman of your age, because by this time I was like in my 30s. He says, I'm surprised a woman of your age, you haven't had any children yet. And when he said that, oh my Lord, I was like, my heart started
racing. There it is.
I'm like, oh my God, he doesn't
know.
He doesn't know. And I started pushing his hand down, like from my thigh. And the more I pushed, the more he was going up towards my crotch. And he got up in the crotch and he looks at me, he's like, what's that? So in my highest voice, I was like, oh my God, you didn't know? I'm trans.
What happened after that?
Listen, this is the moment where it could have gone either way. Thankfully, he was still down with it. And for all I know, it could have been a game he was playing with me, but he was still down with it. And so, but it could have gone the other direction and I could have gotten beat up or, Lord knows what. So that was one experience. And right around that same time, another guy, same thing. And he wasn't down with it. He wasn't, but he was very respectful. He said, well, you know what? I got to give you your props, babes. because you attracted me. So obviously, in my eyes, you had it going on. But he's like, I'm not into that. And we walked away respectfully. But after those 2 incidents, I was like, oh, hell no. I cannot allow myself to be in that type of situation again, because it could be a matter of life and death, you know?
Especially if they perceive it as deception, because deception is never okay. If someone feels led the wrong way, that's just doesn't end well.
But I also think you can't go around telling the whole entire world, I'm trans, I'm trans, I'm trans. I think that also adds to, you know, safety risk and issues. I think there is a sense of discretion that we need to take into consideration, knowing what your safety zones are. Because a lot of times, if I know in my heart of hearts that this person probably does not know that I'm trans and definitely may not be into it, a lot of times I'll just say, I'm seeing someone, or, you know, I'm in a rush, I gotta go, or honey, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, I'm in a rush. You know, I play those cards because I feel safety wise, you can't tell everyone. Am I wrong for feeling like that?
No, I think actually you found a way to navigate that works for you. And you have a really valid point, girl. I mean, yeah, I don't walk around with a sign on my forehead saying I'm trans, but I think I probably have a sign elsewhere, but that's a whole nother story. But no, I think that's a valid point you have brought to the table. It's like, do you really have to tell everyone? I think, for me, I think the key word is balance. And you
I think the key word is dating and romance. You have to tell them in that instance. You don't have to just run around and tell every single person at the convenience store, but definitely if someone's attracted to you and you're about to have sex, you got to kind of tell them.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with it, Misty. Yeah, it's like you know, balance in the sense that you don't tell everyone, but in certain situations, I recommend that you do disclose before, especially with the dating thing. And you know, a guy is really interested, and especially if you're interested in the guy. If you're not, then, you know, yeah, maybe it is fine to say, oh, well, you know, I have a boyfriend or whatever. But if you're interested in this guy that's trying to get with you, then yeah, but for me, hey, disclose, because then you get that out of the way and then you can proceed, you know, accordingly.
I always feel like if someone's embarrassed by something they're doing, they shouldn't be doing it. And that's in terms of men that want to do it secretly or people who don't disclose. If you're that embarrassed about something, you probably shouldn't be. You know what I mean?
I just wanted to go on the record and say, I was mainly inferring that I think it's very important to know your safety, because we've had so many stories like that poor young lady. I don't know the exact names and the exact storyline, but it went to the sense of her car backed into the guy's car and then they brutally beat her to death. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then they wanted to change her name back to her name, her dead name, as they call it, so he would get a lesser charge. And it was just a lot. So knowing your safety, but as Misty would say, there are people out there who do what they call stunting, maybe for a coin or for clout or whatever it is. That's very dangerous. To a degree, I think you just need to know your safety and know what works best for you, and make sure that you're living your authentic self, but protecting yourself as well. So, Spooked. The girls really take it to heart. So if you know that you're a trans woman, as Rajee had mentioned, you're not biologically cisgender, you're trans, it's like a sense of mental clarity and security. I think sometimes, and I'm not trying to put anyone down, but with all these new identities, that also, I feel, adds to the stress if someone doesn't give you the right pronouns. If someone doesn't say she, her, hers, or I think I heard somebody say them, their, theirs, and then another one was X. I mean, it's just a lot. So it's kind of like, you have to have a sense of groundness with yourself. So if you get spooked, you don't take it as like, oh my God, I surrendered the world, I got spooked. Because technically, which I thought was very interesting, the definition of spooked actually is the opposite of what we think of spooked. Because when we think of spooked, we think of like, oops, you got outed. But actually, spooked means you startled that other party and now they're reacting from being startled. And I think Google online has it as, you know, what we know about spooked. General meaning, frightened, unnerved. And there was a synopsis of, they spooked a couple of grizzly bears. So it's kind of like double shade. You got spooked.
Who was more scared?
Who got scared more? Who was spooked more? Final words about this, ladies. What is that? What do we think about that?
I think on one hand, there's passing privilege. And I think that when you're beautiful and passable, sometimes you won't have to worry about stuff as much. But on the other hand, sometimes being very outspoken and loud, proud, and living out loud in full color, it's a way of the truth is always there. So people don't have to think you're hiding. You're just, this is me. Here I am.
Yeah. Well, I always say that our movement wouldn't move if it wasn't for people that weren't passable. Because if you're passable, like, let me give you an example. If there's a trans woman that walks in a store and she's passable, well, no one knows she's trans. But and she gets good customer service and everything's lovely, well, yeah, okay, no one knew she was trans. If I walk in and people know I'm trans and I get good customer service, that's a step in the right direction for trans people.
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying everyone needs to be out loud and proud, but what I'm saying is it's something about going and maneuvering in the world as a trans person and declaring that you are trans and that you're entitled to your civil rights just like everyone else. And what my thing is with being spooked is, I don't mind so much if people clock me, but what I mind is when they're mean and nasty about it. Don't do that. Don't do that. You don't have to humiliate me and be mean and cruel. Yeah, if you want to whisper and say, oh, that's a trans woman, or, oh, you know, and I'm being nice because a lot of times people are like, oh, that's a man. and I'm thinking, a man? What homeboy do you hang out with that looks like? Yeah, what homeboy do you hang out with that looks like me? Come on. I've never lived up to the standards of what a man is supposed to be in society. But yeah, that's what my problem is. People being nasty about it, mean and hurtful and hateful. And that's where I have a problem with the whole spook thing.
Yeah, I call that venomous when someone's just like,
yeah.
A little overboard.
We will never really understand why, truthfully, this became almost monumental in our community. We can laugh at it because, ladies, we are secure within ourselves, but there are some individuals who truly need to understand. Love on yourself a little bit more. Know your surroundings. Learn about your community. Get involved. Get a hobby. Get a job. I think a lot of times, and this is something that was said to me a while back from a physician assistant, he has said to me, the younger trans people are living in a digital world and they're being studied, and that like stayed with me forever. So I just want to throw out there, love on yourself, get outside. Like I'm hoping this summer I can get like a volleyball. I love volleyball. So I'm hoping I can get like the community together for like a cookout and volleyball. We need to get outside more, get into nature more, do some hiking, go to the beach. Even if you don't get in the water, put your feet in the sand, go to the park. Even if you don't like dogs, pet somebody's dog, get outside, enjoy nature, because it'll help if you get spooked. So ladies,
well, I just want to say one thing to piggyback on what you said. There is power in that, because when people see us out in society living our lives, even our presence is a statement of activism. Going out there, enjoying life just like anyone else. And for many years, I kind of stayed away from places that had a lot of people because I was so scared about how people were going to react and how they were going to treat me. And I remember some years back sitting on the beach and digging my toes in the sand and looking around at people and thinking, my God, these people they know that this is like, it's their right to be able to come to the beach and enjoy nature. And in that moment, I was like, and it's my right too. I belong here too. And tears just came down my face because that was a moment where I was like, yes, this is living. This is living. Yeah, so anyway.